Josh here from Chicken Fox Productions with Memories of Us podcast. Today, Tony reaches out to Manuel Astruc, MD, an executive coach and professional psychiatrist. In this interview, Manuel reveals his grief journey and how it has affected his life and his practice.
I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Memories of Us. Today, we're sitting down with Mr. Manuel Astruc, and he's here to tell his story of his loss, his struggles, and how he became to doing the work that he's doing now, to owning private practices and helping others nationwide right now with Zoom.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right. So, how you doing today, Manuel?
I am so excited to be here. We've had one introductory call, and I just love talking to you. So this is
Yeah.
like outstanding.
Yeah, it's man, I could talk with you forever about just oh my God. I love that. I love that. So tell everybody about what you do.
Yeah, so I like you started off by Mr. Manuel Astruc, and that's my coaching, right? So when I'm in my coaching mode, I'm just like the rest of us. But most of my days, I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm the one who's supposed to be helping people. But now in my coaching hat, I can talk a lot more about my own personal experience. As a psychiatrist, the profession has a certain set of standards, and those standards are we don't really self-disclose. And there's really very good reasons for that. But I think in some ways, there's a benefit for people to hear that, even people like me have gone through stuff.
Yes.
So it was September 2008, and I was absolutely miserable. My life from the outside looked very, very good, but I'd gotten to a point where something had to change. I had a private practice that was very successful. I was healthy, and I was completely burnt out. And on this particular day, it was a Saturday evening. The sun was going down, and I was staring at a picture of my twin sister, Magdalena, and she had passed away the month before from a brain tumor that she'd fought for several years.
Sorry to hear that.
And then in this picture, she's literally beaming. She's like glowing. She's smiling and she's happy. And that's how she lived her life at the end, in spite of having a challenge that is hard to imagine. She was married. She had 4 kids. And here I was, outwardly fine, private practice going well, healthy, and so burnt out. And in that moment, I had the good fortune, and I think it was with Magdalena's assistance. I drew a line in the sand. It was a moment of truth for me. And I said, I've got to learn. I'm going to enjoy the ride no matter what going forward. This is just not okay. And I made a lot of changes in my life over the last 12 years. Outwardly, my private practice, I'm still working a lot of hours, but I've been on a quest and a journey to really get clear and start to spread a message and start to help people in ways that I'm not able to do in my private practice. So we'll get a little bit to the message, because there's a couple of things I want people to be able to remember. But the biggest part is, we all have pain.
Yes.
And we all have struggle. Like nobody gets out without having that. So I had a moment of truth in 2008, but if you go back in time, I've also had problems with addiction. I've had problems with alcohol. I've had problems with depression. And I just remember how lonely those times were. I got the help that I needed, but professionally, I was very, very isolated.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. Isolation has a way of sneaking up on you. We become comfortable with it, especially when we don't allow ourselves to feel our emotions. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the isolation.
Well, I'll tell you a story, and it's part of the message that I share. I had gotten to a point, it was just over 20 years ago, uh, where it was very clear I had an alcohol problem. My Fortunately, it never extended to the point where it affected my work, though it very easily could have. Um, but was in complete denial. So the problem wasn't alcohol. The problem was, the stress. You name it. But it became obvious to me that I had a problem, and I went to my first AA meeting. And at that first AA meeting, there was another psychiatrist who, at the end of it, came up to introduce himself, and he said, "You know what? You don't have to be alone anymore." And
Wow.
that was so amazing to get that message. I literally melted. I didn't know how lonely I was. I didn't know how isolated I was, and I didn't have any idea that someone could just kind of touch that nerve and open me up in such a way. So that's part of the message that I send out to people nowadays. So there's three parts to it. That if you don't remember anything else, like people who are listening, if you don't remember anything else, these are the three pieces that to put into your brain for yourself or for someone that you care about that's going through a hard time, to help to support them. You don't have to be alone. There is hope, and change is possible.
I love that. I love that. Especially, you don't have to be alone because I can relate to your story. When we look back on our lives, as men, um, when we go when we go unnoticed, or people don't pay attention to us and things like that, we isolate. Especially if you're dealing with a lot, because no one ever teaches us that it's okay to talk, right? So we isolate, we self-medicate. I've struggled with my addiction with alcoholism as well, and but I understand it though, and I understood it just like you did. Like, something needs to change, and then there was hope, calculating losses, calculating the tragedies. When you look back on your life, it can look very messy, and if you're not careful, if you don't see those little hidden messages inside of your life, it can become overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really important as men in society to look at the stigma and go, we have to change something. We have to let others know that there's hope,
Yeah.
and change is possible. I mean, look at you, look at where you are now, So yeah, let's dive a little bit more into your three stages. Sorry.
No, it's exactly right. Just to add to what you're saying, reality is, life is going to bring us to our knees.
Mm,
Like the challenge isn't to avoid that, right? So there's no avoiding that.
right. Right.
Stuff's going to happen in your life. The expectation is that life is going to bring you to your knees. And the challenge is not to get so strong that doesn't happen. It's to really understand that that's part of a process of living and learning and growing,
Yes.
accepting and surrendering, and getting through those moments in the best ways that we can, with help and with support and with an understanding that it's not about us being weak, but it's about this is how the process works. I have a metaphor that I've been using for years, but it's the crab. So a crab grows in its shell, and the shell protects the crab. And as the crab starts to grow, the shell starts to pinch you. And at some point, that shell needs to break off, and you need to learn a new way of interacting, and you need to develop a new shell. But that period when the shell is growing again, you're a soft shell crab. And during that time, as you're crawling through the ocean floors, every grain of sand that you used to go through, like without a problem, I mean, all of a sudden, every single grain, you're like raw, like
Yeah.
everything hurts.
Yeah.
And the challenge is to understand that that's part of the process. And then the new shell will develop your new skills, your new coping mechanisms, your new emotional growth has every opportunity to develop. But in today's society, oftentimes it's like not acceptable to be going through that raw stage, and we'll
Right.
medicate, we'll run away from it, we'll tell ourselves stories that, we're being weak or inadequate, and we'll get mad. But, it's just part of the process, and having the help, the support, the understanding that that's a normal part of our human growth in life, is part of the challenge. It's okay. It's okay to hurt.
Yeah.
It's okay to
And
get through that.
I think that's where a lot of the problem is. I know for me, I hid a lot of my pain.
Hmm.
So I tell people I grieved for over 30 years without even knowing it. And isolation was huge for me. I didn't want people to get close to me. I had seen so much. I've watched friends pass away. I've watched people commit suicide. I battled with my own demons, and it's just the life in general, like you said, kicked my ass, and it continued to do it for quite some time. And I didn't understand it. And so I watched the people around me. How did they deal with it? Realized there was nobody talking, but
Yeah.
I was constantly hurting, right? And so, I didn't want to um, portray myself as being weak. So
Right.
I had to start getting away from people. And then I realized that 6 months would go and I hadn't had any human contact. And then a year would go by, still no human contact. I constantly moved around, isolating, hurting. And it took a long time. I think for men, it takes a long time for us to actually start to acknowledge that. But I think we need examples
Yeah.
of other men expressing their pain,
Yeah.
expressing those emotions, and understanding that, hey, you're a human and you're no different than the next person. So why aren't you allowing yourself to feel?
And that isolation can occur even in the middle of a crowd of people you're hanging with, right?
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. I've been in. I used to tell people the loneliest I've ever been is when I was with people that I knew,
Yeah.
because I always felt out of place. I always felt that I didn't belong. So I think that contributed to a lot of the pile up that life had just put around me,
Yeah.
and not knowing how to deal with it.
There's not a good model, oftentimes, for how to
Yeah.
connect and how to relate. Um, and it's super interesting. When I had first started with recovery, one of the interesting things, and I got away from it, which is probably what led to more burnout. But um, the men in recovery, that was part of their journey, was learning to connect in a very different way, um,
Yeah.
where they can talk about emotions and having a hard time and what's really going on in their lives, right? So instead of
Right.
like, how you doing? Oh, good, man. How about, them Braves or whatever, right? Um,
Very true.
the fact is that, there was a tribe there, a community that modeled, healthier connections, and that's what we need.
That is very true, and I think that's very, very important because, and I love the word tribe, because it's something that's people, even though the history is there, people really don't pay attention to it. But your tribe is your community. And when you're going through AA, right, you're always looking for people to connect with on a level of understanding. So you're finding your tribe. Just like in grief support, men search out other men that have gone through it. And so we attract each other. You're finding your tribe. And that community, that community is very important to you because that becomes your backbone, that becomes your foundation. So and then you become accountable for one another, right? Yeah, and that camaraderie starts. And I think there's there's a different meaning when it comes to that because your
Yeah.
conversation changes, right? And
Yep.
I think more men, like you said before, we need better role models, but we need the men who are there to be the the role models. We need to be examples for the next following generation to, like you said, let them know that, hey, if you're going through something, talk about it, find support, be around other people, be around other men, find your tribe, right?
So those places where there's safety,
Yes.
um, and then there's a shared experience, there's a shared emotional experience that helps to hook into a desire to open up and a desire to be understood and to be known, without having to have, as Brene Brown talks about, the armor, right? The
Right.
facade of having to, and in those places too, as people get to know each other, as men get to know each other, uh, you can lovingly call people out. It's like, how you doing? I'm good. It's like, well, no, like, how are you really doing? Like, how are you really doing?
Yeah. And that was one of my things too. I got tired of people asking me how I was doing
Yeah.
because no one really wanted to know. Here I was, especially after my son passed away. Um, People didn't know how to talk to me, and I knew it, right? But they was constantly asking me how I was doing. When I started thinking to myself, if I tell you how I'm doing, you're gonna think something's wrong with me. Like you really don't want to know. You
Yeah.
don't want to hear the stories. You don't want to hear what I'm going through right now. And so that's what I told myself. And I found out through friends that it was totally the opposite. Like they were actually genuinely concerned about how I was doing. And it was because they had been there and
Yeah.
they were trying to create that safe bubble for me
Yep.
to be able to do it. And I was so resilient. I was like, no, because you're going to use it against me, right? And I think society has a lot to do with that when it comes to men. They created this stigma, and they said it's not manly for you to do that. So when you look at, when you listen to stories about Vikings, right? When they mourned, they burned their bodies. They went back to war, right? They didn't take the time to grieve. That was their grieving process. But if you look at history and look at African tribes, Amazon tribes, and things like that, they have rituals for grieving. And I think that's where we need to start reconnecting as men. Look at those tribes.
Yeah.
Look at how they come together. They stop everything.
Yeah.
They come together to mourn that loss.
Yeah.
And you see pictures of them. They all connected, right? Community. And if men could actually dig deep down inside and find that community, I think we can turn some things around. We can stop losing our men to suicide and overdoses and the struggles with addiction. We have those things in place nowadays.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts. The question of how are you doing is such a loaded question for people, because what are you supposed to do? Like, your coworker asks you, during before it gets busy, like, do they really want to know? And a lot of times the answer is really no. They really don't. It's just kind of a way of saying hello. But rather than just say hello, we say, how you doing?
That's true.
But then there's people who genuinely are asking, how are you doing? And part of the emotional intelligence is to be able to discern, you know um, who's your audience that you're talking to, and what are the circumstances,
Hmm.
and to not have that all or nothing response of, um, they don't really want to know, right? To get a little bit more nuanced. Um, like with a car, with the gas pedal's not all the way floored or all the way up, right? And so
Right.
there's nuance. We get to figure out like what speed we're supposed to be going and to make adjustments according to the conditions. Um, but it's the same way with that question. We can take it and be a little more thoughtful, introspective. Is this a hello, how you doing, or is this a look, I'm checking in on you, but I care, and how are you?
Right.
Let me know. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
And I also think the persons that's being asked that question need to be honest with themselves, because if not, If we keep playing into the stigma, we'll keep covering it up.
Yeah.
So, in all actuality, yes, it is a loaded question, but the person that's being asked that should be honest. You may not want to hear. You might the person that you're sending it to may not want to hear it, but at least you starting to accept the fact that you're not okay.
Yeah.
You know,
So no, that's good. So like one level below would be the, they're asking how I'm doing. The truth is I'm not doing that good, but the reality is this is not the person or the place. These are not the conditions to open up, right? So all of that can be exactly true. So the question comes, the introspection and check-in, I'm not doing that good, but this is not the place necessarily to open up. It's got to be um, right conditions, safe space, enough time, right person that's developed, some element of trust there.
that is very, very true.
Yeah, yeah,
And like I said, it's such a loaded question. And and it goes back to where do you determine that safe space? And speaking from experience, I've had conversations with men about their losses in the middle of Family Dollar and Walmart and things like that, and people are amazed. The last conversation I had with a guy, we were standing in the lobby of a 7-Eleven, high traffic. And here we are having this conversation. Other men that had walked past, they, kind of turned ahead because, again, what's determined the right time and right place? It was just at that moment.
right,
And in that moment, this person made a decision, and we just got into this conversation,
right.
and the women just were amazed because they had never heard anything like that,
Interesting.
and so it was something that was put out on the forefront.
So the space doesn't matter whether it's 7-Eleven or whether it's like a therapy office, right? The space is really, the discernment of who are you speaking to,
Right.
where's that connection, and is it a safe connection to start to speak,
Yeah.
yeah, open up.
Now, let's eh, let's talk more about your journey, the
Yeah.
spirit. Now, this is one I love talking to you about the spiritual journey aspect of how
Yeah.
you got there, your guiding light.
Yes, so I was born and raised Roman Catholics. My family's from Spain and very Catholic nation. And when we came over, that was the religion for the family. And I moved away from the daily practices, but remained spiritual. And there's a higher power. There's something greater in our lives. And really hadn't paid a lot of attention to that during the time that I was working hard and getting burned out. When Magdalena passed away, and when I had that line in the sand moment, that was really an element of acknowledging this greater force. And a real personal connection with Magdalena, even though she had passed away. And to this day, I'll walk out of the house without my cell phone, and then I'll be like, "Oh, I forgot my cell phone." I'm like, "Thanks, Mag." Right? Like, what made me think of that? But every day there's conversation, and there's an acknowledgement in my life that there's a power greater than myself. And part of the impact for me, over the 12 years, first when I wanted to get out of burnout and have a bigger impact, do something that was different than like the day-to-day grind of one day looking like the next. It was about building a business that generated more revenue, that would give me freedom of time and have a
Mhm.
different, and that was a terrible motivator. I couldn't make that much change or dig into that much. Um, when I looked at a mission and a vision of having an impact, of being able to talk about, the three things, right?
Yeah.
So, we've talked about it, but, just kind of always remember, you don't have to be alone. There is hope and change is possible. So I want to be able to say that and have people remember. We want to save lives. We want to elevate the conversation that all of us should be aware of, that it's okay. Depression, trauma, addiction, anxiety, all of these things that are stigmatized. We want to elevate the conversation and decrease the stigma around that even the healers, even the people who in society are talking about these things, have these challenges. That became a mission that was worthy and that inspired me and moved me, to make changes, and to appear on shows like this.
Yeah.
And that's very much, I think, for me, a big part of a spiritual journey and quest. I feel a calling to do this, and part of my belief is that as people integrate these messages, as we become more kind of accountable and brave and open and confronting and helping others around us, if I help more people to help more people, that trickle down effect is
Yes.
how we start to change the world. So that's a worthy mission, and I am grateful for you for the platform that you have, that we can talk about this stuff. It's really miraculous that we have this ability in this day and age to do this.
This is very true. I mean, who would have thought about this, 20, 30 years ago? It's just amazing how technology can allows us to be able to connect. And I've been pretty fortunate and blessed and humble to have been able to build a platform for us,
Yeah,
because that's what it's all about. It's about, building relationships with people
yeah,
that you never even thought that you would meet one day. So I look at these stories and I hear these journeys, and and I get so many people that come up and talk to people that's been on the show and go, "Hey, I seen your show,
yeah,
and I could tell you, I can I feel like I know you. Feel like we've walked the same path, right?"
yeah,
And so it's building that ironclad relationship and letting people know that we're human. And it's been a challenge, building these things. The biggest challenge for me is getting men to open up.
mm,
Getting men to open up, and but I was up for the challenge, like you said. Through your tragedies, you found your purpose.
yeah,
You found a calling, and I think throughout our lives, we live a life aligned with our purpose, and it takes us a while to connect the dots until we figure out what we need to do. But somehow, some way, our paths, we're already on it. So everything that we go through and all of these challenges is preparing us for that calling. Because that day opens up and you go, everything makes sense, right? You tend to go, this is the reason why I did all of this, so I can be able to do this.
yeah,
And like you said, then it becomes more of a spiritual connection.
yeah,
People, I think more people, especially more men, need to understand that on the other side of that loss is a connection.
yeah,
If you're willing to let go of the things that don't suit you, like pain. I think for me, I held on to pain because it felt like that was the only thing that was connecting me to my
yeah.
loved ones. And so I held on to it, but in turn, I was making myself sick.
And I think you said something along the lines of like every breakdown can be a breakthrough,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Every breakdown, it's a every setback is a setup for a comeback.
Hmm.
And I love that phrase because it's true. If you can look at life in a way that you can learn, that you can accept the challenges and extract, the lessons, and not look at the the downside to it.
Yeah.
I think we as men can grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do beautiful. We can start reclaiming our manhood and
Yeah.
start teaching our younger men, and but also open up the conversations with our significant others, with
Yeah.
our friends and things like that, because these are topics that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
We just don't. And breaking that stigma, we have to open up the door. We have to, get these men to open up, because I've seen what it can happen, to the families. You know, the kids come out. They no longer have to wonder, what you're going through. Men, embrace your emotions.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. This is how we're built. This is how we're created.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. So the journey becomes that you can have a lot of stuff you've been dealing with, and then there can be a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift happens like that, right? So sometimes it happens like that. Sometimes it takes a while to crack, but at some point when there's a paradigm shift and you see things different,
Hmm.
that's a moment of change. And then the challenge is in today's society to allow for that shift to grow, because we all want immediate results, right?
Right.
We want, if I had the awareness and the awakening, now I want like the immediate reward. But we give ourselves a long runway at that point to learn and to grow and to develop the vision over time of what's the impact, and what am I doing. And the fun part that I talk about is, once we get that shift, there are certain things that we can put in place to help us with happiness.
Yes.
And those are the dots that I connected looking back at, my own journey from when my sister had passed away to where I am now, because my life doesn't look that much different. I'm still working just a ton of hours. The stresses are all there, but I feel so much better, and I have a
Right.
much better connection with the world and those around me. And inspiration and possibilities. The burnout is way in the rearview mirror. But it's that long runway to allow yourself to develop these things. So, I mean, at this point, who I work with predominantly are successful entrepreneurs who are dealing with the other side of success. So when you use your success muscle, there's a lot of other parts of your life that can suffer.
Very
And
true.
and those are the people that I help like reconnect with mission, vision, happiness, the idea of happiness. Um, and there are four pillars that I've come up with. Again, this is lots we can unpack under each one, but it's a nice way of thinking about life by design rather than life by default. Um,
I love that.
yeah. So, pillar number one is we are never finished products, ever. Right? There's always room for us to get, more learning, more growing, and that's part of being human and part of having a fulfilled life. At the point that we cut ourselves off and you say, I'm pretty good how I am. I don't need to learn anything. I'm good. Let me just kind of check out and I'll watch Netflix. I've got a job, and there's nothing else. It's hard to really find fulfillment and happiness. So we're never finished products. Keep learning and growing. Number two is connection. Like that is so important. When you look at studies over and over again, the predictors of emotional well-being and physical health as we grow is 100% related to our relationships. Um,
That's very
so
true.
having the individual connections, the tribe and community connections, uh, we want to help, especially for men, right? So that's where we have a hard time is
Right.
connecting, but work on those connections. Next is the idea of blazing your own trail. So many of us, make our decisions. What are we going to do and how are we going to do it based on a path that's been worn before us that others have led us to, and say, this is a good career path. This is a good career opportunity,
Right.
and you're going to mark your success by how much money you make or what level you've gotten to or the car you're driving, your vacations. But when we start to think in terms of, what am I uniquely interested in? What am I uniquely good at? What's the good I want to do in the world? What do I want to contribute to the
Yes.
world? And, you know, you start to look down the road at blazing your own trail. Like you're going to go off into the wilderness with some of us who are doing this different stuff, right? I'm a psychiatrist. I'm talking about grief and addiction and, blazing my own trail. But it's okay. That's kind of where the journey starts, and where the fulfillment in life comes when we allow that. And then the last pillar is that commitment to enjoy the ride no matter what, because we have the choice to let our mind go into all of the negativity. Our brain is really good at that, right? So some people are
Oh
just born
man.
optimists and they don't go there. Many of us, especially people who are high performers and really working to be good people and good at what they do. I mean, there's so much negativity in our heads that we can wallow in and just kind of
Oh
be
yeah.
miserable with. But we can put blinders up. We don't stop that, but we can put up blinders and be looking for things like, gratitude and acceptance and changing our expectations. And there's a lot of work that we can do so that we can enjoy the ride no matter what's going on, because we know stuff's going to go on. Like if you stay
Right.
alive, stuff's going to happen. Like there's no way to avoid that, right? So
No.
those are the four pillars that I've been working to develop, talk about, and show people a way to be thinking about happiness in a different way.
I think that's true. I think when we think of people as individuals, we all have our individual meaning of happiness, right? Like some people want the big houses. That's going to bring them happiness until they get it. But it's what got them there.
Yeah,
Is what creates the negative side of it, and I understand that a lot more than what most people think. Especially building a nonprofit and stepping outside of my comfort zone. And staying on my, as they say, well, as you say, blazing my own trail.
yeah,
I like to tell people I found my own lane, and this year I'm in gear. So, and I'm going straight for everything, but it's what I didn't see is
yeah,
what scared me before I started all of this. All the many different times that I started on a path and got scared because I didn't. It was unfamiliar to me.
yeah.
Especially as a man. When it's unfamiliar, you're like, no, I'm gonna go this way.
Uh,
But eventually, that fear became curiosity. And I
yeah,
think that's where, if you allow fear to take over, you will stop every time. So having those four pillars is like a guideline to get through it.
yeah,
It somehow gets you outside of your own way. Because when
yeah,
it boils down to it, every failure is every time that we stop, we're so close to it. But our minds, right? You have this thing, and our minds go, I don't want to do that because it doesn't. It's scary,
yeah,
it's messy, right?
yeah,
And you get hit with a few chairs in your life. Eventually, your mind goes, "I'm not going to do that anymore." And
right.
having a platform to go, you know what? If you took this chair and rearranged it, you can actually sit down until you get ready to start moving forward again, right? Blazing that trail, and I love that. And,
And when you talk about getting out of your comfort zone,
mhm,
that's where the action is, that's where the living is, and staying in the comfort zone is where the decline and the inevitable misery can really set in. But what's also interesting, is that when we are out of our comfort zone and doing that struggle, like I have to figure this out, I have to figure out, how to
right,
do a
right,
nonprofit, and there's so many moving parts, and it's hard work. There's so as a doctor, I've got to bring in some science and like some hope out there. When your brain is struggling with that stuff, it's actually really good for your brain. Um, so there's more and more evidence that's coming out that when you're struggling with new learnings, it helps offset cognitive decline as you get older. Um, so that learning stuff that's hard to learn, right? The
yeah,
early part of a learning curve, whether it's a language, whether you're learning to play the drums, it doesn't matter what it is, but when you put yourself into having to learn and struggling to learn something that's hard, like once you've mastered it, like we've gotten the pathways laid down, now it's time to learn something else.
I
So
like
always kind
that.
of learning and growing, and it's good for your brain.
Yeah, I find reading a lot of books, getting referrals from people. having that. I have a very curious mind. I'm very observant around the world because I'm always looking for opportunities, to learn, to grow, to give back more than what I've received. So I'm constantly searching for it. And I think for me, that's been um, my greatest part of my journey
Yeah.
is just wanting to learn everything about what I'm doing, meeting people like yourself that,
Yeah.
because it's inspiring. It's
Yeah.
inspiring. I mean, you have successful practices, and most people out there that are, thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, but going through the struggles, they can look back on this and go, you know what? He's on to something. He's definitely on to something, and I love that. I do. Oh my God! So tell people about the work that you're doing right now.
So over 12 years, a model that, again, looking backwards and reading some, there's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, who's also written about deep work and concentration and focus. But one of his earlier works was So Good They Can't Ignore You. But he talks about a way of designing and thinking about a way to be really happy in the work that you're doing. And the framework is, first you get good at something. Like, you
Right.
got to get good at it, right? So you can't skip that step. You can't just jump to success. Um, and at the same time that you're putting in the time and the work, he calls it career capital. You're also thinking about, the mission, the vision, the purpose, like, what do you want to do? And sometimes it's something that's really, for the good of the world, and sometimes it's just something that's innate in you that you want to, like, achieve. So
Hmm.
in one of the stories in that book, there's a gentleman who's an archaeology major, becomes an archaeology PhD, and he had a mission. He wanted to teach the world more about archaeological thinking. Like, that was his big goal. And he ultimately was able to hit that. But you get your career capital, and then you try things that are aligned with this vision of where you want to go and what you want to do. And these are small steps that don't require a lot of time, energy, or money. They're adjacent possibles. It's like walking through one door of a room into the room that's adjacent. So it's an easy next step.
Right.
And you try something. Um, so I tried many adjacent possibles as I was working with this vision of what I wanted to do. And it's been 12 years. In the last 3 years, it's about moving into coaching. Um, and that was really a hard step for me, because I was coming as a psychiatrist and thinking, I'm somehow taking a step backwards, going into coaching. Like, coaching is the Wild West. I've got this profession with professional standards. And I know that there's just absolutely amazing and wonderful coaches out there. But somehow going into that seemed like it was stepping back from what I had done. But I managed to figure out that it was just fear that was holding me back. It was fear of being judged by others.
Oh my
So it
God.
wasn't fear of the mission. Like, I had this big mission that I wanted to take, but I was afraid of what everybody was going to say. Um, and I figured that out when I read the Man in the Arena speech that I think it was Teddy Roosevelt gave in 1915, where he talks about getting in the arena. And in the arena, there's spectators, right? They're going to, like, make fun of you. They're going to be critical of you. The critics are going to come out, but you're the one in the arena. You're the one that's doing the work. You're the one that's getting battered and bruised, doing the work of building a business. So that helped me to just kind of really commit to building out this coaching practice. The difference between the work that I do when I'm coaching and the work that I do when I'm helping psychiatrically. Psychiatrically is really about following the trail of tears, to help people to kind of get better. And this is a definition from Carol Kaufman, who's the head of Harvard's Institute of Coaching. So following the trail of tears to get people back to being better. And coaching is following the trail of dreams to help people get to where they want to be. Uh, and it really became about spreading a message about mental health,
Yeah.
because that is a passion, and people die, and I want that to be something that we can reduce suffering in the world. and also working with, ultimately the um, business question of, who's your customer and what do you do for them. And it became about, helping successful entrepreneurs who are experiencing the other side of success and want some help with that. And in the meantime, as I'm searching for that community that wants that help, there's a whole lot of stuff that I can talk about that helps a whole lot of other people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from
Yeah.
your lived experience. And so I mean, being off running in the right direction, helps with that. And do you find it hard to balance the both, or do they kind of intertwine, the psychiatric side and the coaching side, you know?
When I first started coaching, what I did was I had like 6 months of preparation in my practice where I was putting out announcements that I was starting a new endeavor that had nothing to do with my medical license, that I was going to start a coaching practice
Mhm.
that had nothing to do with medicine. When I work with my coaching clients, I tell them this is not medical. I'm not going to diagnose. I'm not going to treat, but I can't turn off my head. Like if I see something that's worrisome or potentially could be helped with, some sort of treatment or someone making a diagnosis, I can make a referral and I will definitely do that. But I can't
Okay.
be the one when I'm your coach to take on that relationship. That would be somebody else. And then when I'm working with my practice, uh, I can be doing a lot of therapy with folks, um, and talking about happiness and things like that. So those sorts of insights can be sprinkled into my treatment sessions with patients pretty easily without there being any conflict. It's really with the coaching folks that. Um, I set the boundary of I'm not going to diagnose. I'm not going to do medications. But if I see that there's something like that would be helpful, I will definitively let you know.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you talk about self-care, understanding as a man. What are some of the things, steps to self-care when you're embarking on that journey?
I'll tell you what I did and then kind of the quick takeaways. When I first made a commitment to enjoy the ride no matter what, I made some immediate changes. And the first change that I made was I put up blinders to my negative thinking. It was still there, but I just did not give it the time of day. It would creep up. I'm tired, another day ahead and there's no end in sight. I'd be like, no, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about making things better, however that's going to be. So I put up those blinders. Can't get perfect at it, but you can get better and better at that over time. I tell a story. I went home and the dogs needed to be walked, and I'd done all this work on myself. And it's like, oh no, I'm gonna be the one that walks the dogs. So I was like disturbed that I had to walk the dogs. And we're walking, and the dogs are happy, and it's a beautiful night. And I'm just like, I can't believe I'm walking the dogs. And then it like occurred to me that I was being incredibly stupid. Um, like it's a beautiful night. The dogs are happy. Like, what in the world are you doing thinking about? Like, why are you like just enjoy the walk? So I was able to get out of that. But just like anybody, I will have my moments where I'm not enjoying the ride. I am better at not tolerating that. Another thing with the uh, changes with self care is I turned off stuff that was negative. I stopped news. I love sports and I loved sports radio, uh, but it had become drama and it had become controversy and it was no longer about excellence. So I turned off news, I turned off sports radio, and I turned on to podcasts and audiobooks and stuff that I could listen to when I was doing chores or driving. And I just became a sponge for things that were different than just my psychiatric knowledge, but business, coaching, marketing, leadership, like everything became in, but I surrounded myself with a tribe of virtual mentors. Like what you're doing here is being a virtual mentor and inspiration for people around you. So
Thank you.
blinders, tribe of virtual mentors, turn off the negativity. And then the physicality piece, I changed one meal. I was eating terribly. I changed one meal, and then ultimately I changed a bunch more. So I ate a better breakfast. I stopped going by Dunkin' Donuts to get a bagel every morning, and like actually took the time to make a smoothie that I would look forward to. I started working out, and it started off with a workout program that was literally like 3 push-ups and 3 sit-ups, like something I could just knock out, but I like had no excuse not to do it. Because I
Right.
tried doing hour workouts, and what would happen is I'd do that for a day, 2 days, a week, and then it would like fall off for like a year. So it was like, let me just do a little bit that I'm going to be sure that I can do every single day, and then that built that into a much more regular exercise schedule. I focused on sleep. Like I should be getting 8 hours of sleep, and sleep shouldn't be like when I'm busier I get less sleep, and it's no, let's aim for a good amount of healthy sleep. And I'm still not like totally dialed in, but meditation is important. And
Yeah.
I'd say probably 3/4 of the days I will spend 10 to 15 minutes meditating. So
Yeah. That's
so it's the physicality, focus on your nutrition, moving more, sleep, and prayer, meditation. Then blinders to your negative thoughts, and cut out the negative toxic stuff, and fill it with virtual inspiring mentors.
That's very true. And I learned that as on my journey as well, having good mentors around me, positive people. So it forced me to get rid of the toxic people that were around me. And they were people that I thought were my friends, but then I started realizing that, it's easy to feed off of negativity,
Yep.
when you're trying to be positive, but you have so much around you, and it kind of forces you to separate yourself. That is not a bad thing. A lot of people feel bad about it. No, it's not bad to have people around you that can inspire you and push you forward in life. And being a personal trainer, totally agree. The physical aspect of it, eating right, developing those day-to-day habits. I'm an avid lifter, and which has led me to build a very successful personal training company. I and I got there by being teachable, by developing those habits. I still haven't got the sleep thing down packed because I'm still utilizing my 24 hours. I'm still working towards that bigger vision. But that's what keeps me going. So 4 hours of sleep for me is sufficient because I see the bigger picture. We all work to being free, financially free, debt free. Um, but you have to go through some stuff. You got to get scraped up in order to get there. It's not an easy road. And then what's been huge for me, which I've recently, as you said before, which I've recently introduced back into my life was meditation, becoming more authentic, or authentically myself. So understanding that the individualizing that comes with that led to a lot of self care. It just led to one to understand more of what the universe has for me, and being curious enough to follow the path leading to that.
Yeah, so I love that curiosity. It keeps coming up as one of the things that I think is learning and growing, right? That's one
Right.
of the pathways to happiness. I think when we're brought into the world and the planet. We come in just sponges for
Hmm.
learning, just curious about everything. If you've been around any kid, why, like they are constantly thinking. And then somewhere along the way, we go to school, and through no fault of schooling, it's just the way that the system is developed. We're taught about right answers and wrong answers, and somehow that's just like kind of stifles creativity, doesn't it?
It really does. It
And then we have to
does.
turn on the tap again, like at some point, like curiosity is good, learning, growing. There's so much interesting stuff out there just to like go learn, go do. Yeah.
Yeah. I've, I've always, and like a lot of people that are striving to make an impact in this world, I think no is a fuel. Somebody says no, you can't do that. I always look and go, why not? I always, I see people, I see people turning on the TV and want to do that, and I go, I'd rather invest in a book because that knowledge I can use, right?
Yeah.
And what's on TV, I mean, I really don't want to put that in my head, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of people content with that. They work the 5 hours out of the day on that one thing, right? Now 5 hours is not bad, but then they wonder why, it's, when they see other people putting in that 20, 22 hours a day, developing themselves, as you said, watering that seed that's inside of you. We
Yeah.
all put here, I believe, to strive in this world and do good things to leave this world better
Yeah.
than what we've seen it. Because when you've seen the things that we have, the world can be a very messy place.
And here's like to come back to the where we started. Like we started with grief, right? So we start with grief and hurting, like we're hurting, and
Right.
people can be suicidal. They can be at the end of their rope, and there is so much hope. If we can just get a little crack of change is possible, and then the light comes in. Like if you get just a little crack in there, and um, I heard the term souls on fire. When I
I
went to
love that.
AA, it was because my hair was on fire. Right? It was terrible. But now it's like the soul's on fire, and it comes about as a result of this awakening experience, this paradigm shift that starts with these moments that people can't imagine,
Right.
you know, getting through. Like the we're at the end of a rope, and there's a dark tunnel, and I don't see anything possible
Right.
to change. And that's what you bring with this podcast, right? Is showing people not only is it possible, but there's a lot of good stuff if we can start that journey and just lift your head up, just get a moment of inspiration, a moment of hope.
Yeah, and also showing the different avenues of grief. Um,
Yeah.
and some stories don't have a happy ending, So I
Mm,
don't want people to be misconceived that, that every story has a happy ending. But there is hope. And that's what I want to bring about there because even though it's not a happy ending now,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that it's going to be a happy ending later on down the line. But some of the guys I've had on, they still struggle with addiction, and some of them I've lost contact with, and
Yeah.
later found out that they're not doing too well. So
Yeah.
reaching out, doing my part to make sure that they know that I'm still here
Yeah.
and everything. And then we have stories like yours where you've turned your grief into this beautiful thing and you've seen the challenges and you've let it fuel you and seen the spiritual connection on the other side, and so that brings hope. That's inspiring to me,
Yeah.
and for the person that's struggling right now, and that can relate to the story, they can
Yeah.
say, you know he did it too.
Yeah.
I wonder if I allowed myself to follow this journey through grief, to embrace everything that's going on. I wonder what could come about of that. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen when dealing with the challenges of grief in men?
Um, it's often that um, desire to escape from the feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so it doesn't feel like it's manly. It doesn't. It feels like weakness. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges in society that we have is that feelings are wrong. Like I shouldn't be feeling this,
Right.
and the ability to learn and to accept that feelings are just part of the journey, part of the path. Another big piece is, shouldn't this be over now? like
Right.
we
Right.
should put it on a shot clock, right? So I should have my grief for about, whatever, 2 months, and then like we'll be at the finish line and I can do the next thing. But our feelings are gonna take their time. They're gonna come and they're gonna go and they're gonna evolve. And the greatest gift that we can offer ourselves is the gift of time to process and to get through whatever levels we need to. Um, Another big piece becomes around doing it alone. Not connecting, not allowing others to help and to support and to be there for you. Accepting that help. Again, it's seen as I'm not supposed to be feeling this, and it's weak and wrong to have it. Um,
Yeah.
those are probably just kind of universally that avoidance of that which hurts us.
That's true. And it's, I tell people, even I've had to listen to my own words,
Yeah,
self inflicted wounds are the worst ones.
yeah,
They really are. Because when you're not doing that, you're really doing a lot more harm to yourself. And, it's really important that men start to understand that um, it's okay. It's
yep,
okay to cry. You know,
yeah,
you lose your mother, you lose your sister. It's okay to cry. There's no harm in it, especially when you're not going home and taking it out on everybody and everybody's throwing their hands in the air, going, "He's crazy."
yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to help, and things
Right.
like that. So the do's and don'ts of
Yeah,
those things people need to pay attention to, but also allowing, especially in the relationships,
yeah.
allowing yourself space to process, but also allowing yourself space to communicate efficiently.
Yeah. And in the relationship, it's particularly hard to also understand that everyone's going to have, their own journey through grief, to allow for
Hmm.
it's not, we think that we should be on the same railroad car going through the same stages at the same time,
Right.
but it's really parallel tracks. And everyone's going to be like moving through those tracks at their own rate and their own time. And it's not right or wrong. Um, it's just, wherever you happen to be with your journey, and accepting and allowing and loving someone no matter, where they are on that journey for themselves. The idea of being able to take yourself out of feeling bad by addiction. And
Hmm.
addiction can be booze, drugs, but addiction can be food. Addiction can be porn. Addiction can be work.
Yeah.
Addiction can be, my 2-hour workout that I need to, like, keep my head together, right?
Got to get those
um,
endorphins going, man.
yeah, yeah, like don't mess with my, it makes me sane, right? But it's, so we define addiction as something that we're doing compulsively, and the two components to addiction is that we do it in spite of the fact that it's giving us negative consequences,
Right.
um, right? And that even though we tell ourselves we're doing it on purpose, we've really kind of lost control. Like we've turned, like our brakes don't work. Like we tell ourselves our brakes work, but they really don't. And I'll use the analogy, like if you take your car out and every like fifth time you take it out, you push down on the brakes and you go through a red light? Like, do you keep driving that car? Like no, ever,
Right? No.
right? But if every fifth time, you go and you open the Doritos, and every fifth time you go through 3 bags of Doritos, you'll say, I'll just work harder at not having so many Doritos next time, instead of like, my brakes don't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I find that that happens with addiction,
Yep.
um when you had that first beer, or
Yeah.
get more dramatic, heroin and things like that. When you get that first fix, it even though it gives us a negative effect, I think it changes the chemical reaction in our brain, and our brain goes, I like this feeling, because your brain is designed to protect you, right? So if you can get a feeling and your brain doesn't have to work as hard to protect you, it will often crave that. So one beer becomes two, and then it tends to multiply.
Yeah.
And before you know it, now you're sitting around with 2 to 4 cases of beer, still searching for that numbness, still searching for that escape, and everything. I've done it in my own way, and I've seen other people, other men, get stuck.
Yeah.
They don't reality. The reality can be a beautiful thing if you allow it to be, but if your life is full of trauma, life doesn't seem so fun after a while.
Yeah.
Whether you're searching entrepreneurship, we're searching for the happy place. I got all of these things, but on the inside, I'm reaping the consequences of not not allowing myself,
Yeah.
to enjoy this journey. I want to talk about one of your projects, your next act.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, explain that to us, to the audience.
When I started my coaching practice, it was incredibly important to me that I designed something that really helped people. I didn't want to throw out a coaching um, uh, program that was not professional and tested, because I think that we can get the marketing dialed in so that people will want the result that you're promising, but you have to be able to deliver the result.
Right.
So your next act became the coaching program that I built out, and I tested it out over the course of a year and a half with various individuals who had a desire to make changes in their life, where they were doing pretty good, but they wanted to do some things better. And we got just phenomenal results. And when the pandemic hit, I had been on a pathway of like growing it bigger, like going from, the local area to like a bigger area around me. And I was designing the workshops to be all live and in person, to build a community, a tribe.
Right. Right.
And with the pandemic, I've got this beautiful space that could no longer be used. So in the long run, the vision was to be really working nationwide, and that I would be going, slowly from, you know, people who had desires to change to that entrepreneurial community who were experiencing the other side of success. That's where the trajectory was, and that was where I wanted to work, because those folks all have, a quote unquote platform. They all have employees. They have, people that look up to them, as successful entrepreneurs. Um, and I thought that if I worked with those folks, they would be really good at whatever they learned and whatever changes they made, to be able to disseminate it out into the world. So that was a force multiplier for me once I got up to there. But with the pandemic, I had to go from like growing slowly to growing fast. So your
Yeah.
next act is not going out into the world. The vision is that at some point there'll be groups of successful entrepreneurs will be interacting, and we'll have some learnings and some frameworks to work through and to understand and to learn. But then having a group setting where folks are talking about feelings and challenges and the other side of success, with the idea that in order to grow your business, in order to get your life better, you've got to dig deep inside. right?
Oh yeah.
The growth of your business is going to be limited by your own personal growth. You've got to be working on yourself as hard as you're working on your business, and that's where I'm headed to. Initially, right now, I'm just working with select one-on-one clients.
Hmm.
If people go to my website, they can apply there. So it's Manuel Manuel Astruc and there's an application process. I'm being sort of selective because I don't have that much time, with people who are really motivated, interested, have a pain point. So I will take applications and interview folks and see if they're a good match right now, or if it may be that, as the group program gets started up, part of what I'm having to do is to downsize my private practice. So I've recently taken on some associates here so that I can slowly transition patients to my associates so that I get more time to be working on the entrepreneurial um, projects. And the other things that I have available, so if you go to that website and you do a /, so manuelastruc.com/free, there's a 13-minute video that's about the question that was asked of me, Dr. Astruc, if you could tell people one thing to change their life, what would that be? I was asked that at my first marketing conference. Um, and we were like going around. I'd never been to a business conference, and I was sweating bullets. And I was trying to explain my business problem, like starting a business other than being a psychiatrist and so on and so forth. And someone said, well, why don't we start with this? Like, what's the one piece of advice you would give people to change their lives? And it was such a great question, but I couldn't answer it. So I got a little defensive. Oh, that's too complicated a thing. I couldn't possibly say one thing, but I thought about it for years and I came up with a list of about 10 things and, it moved around, but the number one thing, I've got a whole video on that, on the website. So manuelastruc.com/free. And I also have on Facebook, I do a morning musing. So I start seeing patients at 7, and a couple of minutes before 7, I started doing this going on 4 years ago. I'll muse. I'll just think. I'll talk out loud so that I get better at talking and get clear about what I'm thinking. And it's Manuel Astruc Coaching on Facebook. And I do that little Facebook Live every single day.
Yeah, I've seen a few of your videos on there, and I really enjoy them. So anybody that's listening right now, go to his Facebook page, like the page, and enjoy the thoughts of Mr. Manuel Astor,
Yeah.
because it's amazing. When talking about goal setting, what's the structure that you follow? I know for me, writing things down, also carrying around a
Yep.
recorder has been very, very
Yep.
important. But the main thing for me is I have a book of I have a couple books of gratitude now. So I can be sitting there and I get a cool breeze across my face, and it could be a summertime, right? I started this in the summertime, and it felt so gratifying. I appreciated it more because then after that it was like 100 degrees, and I was going, okay, I can use that breeze again. But having a gratitude list seemed to open up a lot of doors for me too,
Yeah.
because it made me more acceptable to the opportunities being presented, and and developing the courage to go after them.
I mean, that's so amazing. So many times we think our gratitudes need to be come in with a neon sign, like they're so big, like you can't miss them, right? So,
Right.
like you hit the lotto or something. Um, but gratitude, when you cultivate that practice of regularly reflecting on your gratitudes and writing it down. Or in somehow making note of it, little things, the smell of coffee in the morning, isn't that like awesome? You
Yes.
have a good piece of chocolate, like that's amazing. There's lots of things to be grateful for, but we like will completely overlook them and we'll focus on, I got a flat tire. And that's all we'll think about, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, this is terrible. So focusing on gratitude is important. I like to have people focus on vision. Where do you want to be? 3, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Mhm.
Actually write down what a perfect day, 3, 5 years, 10 years down the road are going to be looking like. Um, we look at so that's your next act. That's who you're becoming. Your next actions are going to be in alignment to sort of get you there. So we work with quarterly goals, like what's going to be the goal that's going to be moving you. Oftentimes, the first goals are going to be around that energy and self-care piece, to get those dialed in, because if we don't have that foundation, it's really hard to like go very far in this journey. We want our bodies and our minds and our spirits to be aligned, because not just for the what we want in 3 years or 5 years, but 20, 30, 40 years down the road, I want my brain working, I want my body to be working, I want to be able to lift up my luggage and put it up overhead, and I want to remember where I put it. So so those are the things that we work on initially, and then it's really kind of just the accountability. I think journaling, like having like a daily regular practice, either at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, where gratitude is in there, and also the things that you're working on,
Mhm.
and you don't want to be working on 30 things. It's 2 or 3 strategic things. Like, more things on your list means you're going to be less likely to complete them because you're going to get distracted. So the 2 or 3 things, and then once they get knocked out, you can do more. But that's the and then obviously obstacles are going to come up, and that's my sweet spot, is helping people with their mindsets and the obstacles and clearing that stuff out.
I definitely understand that because, like you said, life is going to happen.
Yeah.
The journey is not easy, and life life will test you. And I look at it as, when life does that, it is primarily asking you in so many ways. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure this is what you want? And I think that's when all the challenges come about. Is it's there because if you want it, you'll keep pushing, right?
Yeah.
and sometimes you gotta get beat down in order to get built up, and that's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah.
I enjoy that because journaling, I can look back. Like if I come across the obstacle, I often find out that it's been repeated before.
Hmm.
So what
Yes.
did I do this time that's different from the last time? Why does this seem different? So I look back on it and I go, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna try it this way. Then eventually those obstacles just become like little granules of hot sand. I mean, you're gonna tiptoe across it, but tiptoeing is not bad, right?
And that mindset of, I can figure this out, rather than I'm going to stop, this is too hard.
Yeah.
um I mean, if you think back to the 50,000 years ago, when we were hunting and gathering, if you were hungry and it was cold and rainy, like, you didn't say, I'm just gonna like take a nap today. Like you went out there and, like, I want food. Like, I
Oh
gotta
yeah.
I gotta go find food. Do you want to? Absolutely, I want to go find food. There was no quitting. There was no, this is too hard, I think I'm gonna go home. It's like, we need to find food.
It's very, very true. Oh man, I enjoy. I do love talking with you. Just for the records again, let everyone know how they can get in contact with you, and give them some words of wisdom.
Yes. So the website, manuelastruc.com. So Manuelastruc. And the video is manuelastruc.com/free. Facebook Live. You can find me on Facebook, Manuel Astruc Coaching. And the words of wisdom is really, the message to stick in your head, and also to be able to share with others, is, uh, you don't have to be alone. There is hope. Change is possible.
Man, well, Manuel, I want to say thank you today, and to everyone out there in the audience. Go check out Manuel. Go to his website and look at the video. And if you get a minute, like and share and his page and enjoy his morning rituals, his morning muse. And Manuel, thank you again. And for everybody out there, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Memories of Us. And if you like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Memories of Us podcast. We couldn't have done this without all of your support. Tune in next week for more great people doing inspiring things for others. From the words of Manuel Astruc, you don't have to be alone. There is hope and change is possible. Until next time, be strong.